and blacks would be the casualties. Nixon not only won re-election with that strategy, he set the stage for the establishment of the Drug Enforcement Agency, and the war on drugs became a mainstay of American politics. Even after Nixon resigned and the Vietnam War ended, thus eliminating the anti-war left, blacks were still targeted with devastating consequences. In 1982, as crack cocaine began to alter America's drug landscape, President Ronald Reagan said, "Drugs are bad, and we're going after them, and we're going to win the war on drugs." His wife, Nancy, became the face of the infamous Just Say No campaign, while Reagan and his political allies instituted racist laws such as the Anti-Drug Abuse Act of 1986. Under that law, distributing just 5 grams of crack, a low-cost form of cocaine more accessible in black communities, carried a minimum 5-year federal prison sentence. One would have to distribute 500 grams of powder cocaine, an expensive form of the drug used in affluent white communities, in order to get the same 5-year federal sentence. The drug war escalated under President George H.W. Bush, who used the DEA to lure an 18-year-old black high school student named Keith Jackson to an area near the White House. Once there, Jackson sold drugs to undercover agents and was arrested in a publicity stunt that enabled Bush to brandish a bag of crack during a nationally televised speech. Bush said at the time that solving America's drug problem would require more prisons, more jails, more courts, more prosecutors. Over the course of his presidency, Bush made that approach a reality. He increased the federal drug control budget from $5 billion to over $12 billion, and increased the federal prison population by over 16,000 people in just 4 years. Jackson, the 18-year-old who sold the crack Bush showed on national television, was among the imprisoned. Though federal prosecutors did not win a conviction for the crack sale near the White House, Jackson was eventually sentenced to 10 years for a previous sale to undercover agents. That kind of sentencing became the legacy of the drug war in black communities, where African Americans were already being disproportionately arrested and jailed for marijuana. With the advent of crack, a quick, intense, and cheap high that put men in graves and women on the streets, black communities were in tatters. The family structure disintegrated. Drug dealing was rampant. Property crimes were common. Murder rates skyrocketed. Black leaders asked for more police to stem the tide of drug-related violence and got much more than they bargained for. President Joe Biden, then a 4th-term U.S. Senator from Delaware and chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, helped to write the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act of 1994. In the run-up to the bill's passage, Biden took to the Senate floor and used language that was rife with racial undertones to win his colleagues' support. "We have predators on our streets that society has, in fact, in part because of its neglect, created," Biden said during an impassioned speech. He went on to describe a cadre of young people, tens of thousands of them, born out of wedlock, without parents, without supervision, without any structure, without any conscience developing because they literally have not been socialized. They literally have not had an opportunity. Biden added that he wasn't concerned about why someone is a malefactor in society, and that criminals needed to be kept away from my mother, your husband, our families. At a time when political survival meant embracing a tough-on-crime stance, Biden and his white colleagues on both sides of the aisle were eager to push the legislation through. They were joined by members of the Congressional Black Caucus, like longtime South Carolina Congressman Jim Clyburn, who supported the legislation despite the racial rhetoric that made the bill palatable for conservatives. Then, President Bill Clinton, long seen as too liberal by those on the political right, enhanced his own crime-fighting bona fides by signing into law a bill known as the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act of 1994. Among other things, The legislation put